When we take our exam, we not only have to look out for things to do right, but we also have to look out for things to not do wrong. And in this video, we're going to be covering common exam mistakes that many people have made on their exam. Odds are you've probably made at least one or two of these during your time taking exams throughout general school. Let's go through this first common exam mistake to avoid number one, which is spending too much time on questions. Many times we can encounter a difficult question on an exam and we read it, we reread it, we read it 3 times, 4 times, we look at the answers and we're just wasting too much time. And we have to understand, again, our time limit. And that's the importance of what we talked about in the previous video, is understanding how much time we have per question in order to gauge in our own mind. Your own brain will do this for you after a certain amount of time, but in order for you to gauge consciously or unconsciously how long you should spend on each question. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, is people spending too much time on questions from question to question, and that can really destroy your exam time, because if you aren't able to finish all questions in your allotted time, you're going to lose out on a significant amount of scoring. Additionally, many people tend to overthink questions. So if you have a question that is 3 or 4 sentences, while it might be quick to read and the answers might be relatively straightforward, people tend to implement their own scenarios and their own ideas and their own thoughts into questions, which can really negatively affect the way that you understand the question. So when you're thinking about questions, just make sure that you're reading the full question, reading each of the answers, and understanding, okay, what exactly makes sense here? Because odds are people aren't looking for you to insert 100 variables when you're taking an exam. Most questions should be relatively straightforward, and you have to go by different terms and different things that you see within the question in order to understand what's being asked. Just make sure you don't take too long overthinking questions. Common exam mistake number 3, on the other hand, is rushing through or not thoroughly reading your question. While you want to make sure you're not overthinking things, you also want to make sure you're not rushing things. So make sure that you read every question, make sure you read every answer, and that you factor each answer into your overall final understanding, and you select the proper answer from there. Number 4 is changing answers without a good reason. We talked about this in the previous video, but if you have a gut feeling about an answer the first time you read a question and you just think, I really think this answer B, I think answer B is the right answer. And then you read it and nothing's really changed with the question. You don't have any new context and you're just like, but maybe it's D, maybe it's D. I suggest you stick to your first answer, and you very rarely change answers without a solid reason. So when would you change an answer? Well, you could change an answer if you reread the question, you go through it, and you find a new piece of context. Or maybe you reread the entire question, you look at your answer, and you say, okay, I was missing this part. That's why I picked that old answer. But until you can logically justify a new answer, you should probably stick to your gut feeling in terms of your first answer that you've selected, unless something has changed. The 5th common exam mistake is skipping the review screen. So when you're all finished with the exam, you're at the very end, you're just getting ready to submit the exam, most exams will let you press a review button or have some sort of exam review feature, and many people skip that. By not reviewing your exam, you're probably going to miss out on questions that you might have highlighted. You don't have the chance to go back and make sure that you've answered all questions. So if the exam software that you're using or the exam that you're taking has a review section or a review screen, I highly recommend that you use that. The 6th exam mistake that I've seen is neglecting time checks. Again, I usually have most people check in every 15 or so minutes, just looking at the time based on the clock that they give you. That way you can understand, okay, I'm going to check it every 15 minutes, probably about 4 times per hour, and I'm just going to keep going through questions. Now, if you find yourself working on a question for like what you feel is 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, maybe you should check in on your time. That's probably a really good point to check on your time. But for the most part, besides questions that I feel are taking too long, I'll do at least 4 time checks, usually doing time checks once every 15 minutes. You can use more or less. That isn't a hard rule, but from my experience, that's the sweet spot, because you can keep answering questions pretty quickly and you can also check in when needed. Exam mistake number 7 is cramming the night before and being drained on the actual exam. So while this isn't a common exam mistake in the exam, this is common the night before. And I wanted to clarify this. The day before, like we've talked about in earlier parts and earlier videos of this section, you want to make sure you keep things light. And that includes the night before. Don't cram, don't freak yourself out. Do a light review the day before. That way the day of, your brain is fully recharged. So make sure your brain is fully recharged. You got a good night's sleep. You didn't cram the night or day before, and that's going to help make sure that your brain is centered and ready to go after that exam that you're working on. The 8th and the final exam mistake is panicking after a hard question. So let's say that you encountered on question number 13 an extremely hard question and you've got 90 questions left. Should you try and solve that question then and there? And most likely not. With our different types of exam tips, the way that we teach it is we teach just pass on to the next question, flag that difficult question you're on, question 13, we said, flag question 13, move on to question 14, come back to question 13 when you got some time, no problem. But if you're forced to answer a question and you can't continue on or flag things, if you're on one of those exams where you can only answer one question at a time, you can't go back, then one of the best things you can do during a hard question is read it, understand it as fast as you can one more time, and then just choose an answer, because these hard questions are there to test you and to see if you're going to go off path. Oftentimes, these hard questions aren't necessarily always there just to test you from a hard subject perspective. They're also meant to throw you off track time wise. So keep that in mind. And with that, these are our 8 common exam mistakes. I encourage you to avoid these common exam mistakes, understand which ones you might fall victim to, think of at least 1 or 2 that you've done in the past and how you'll do better and avoid those on this upcoming exam. But just keep in mind, everyone has their own exam mistakes that they make. These aren't the only exam mistakes by any means, but these are by far the most common ones that I've seen my students and test takers and students in general fall victim to. So keep these common exam mistakes in mind, see which ones you can improve on and which ones you can identify from your own exam taking from the past.